Squeex, watch this. Garfield Dark Ride?
You don't
What the hell is this video, man? Garfield's Dark Ride, huh? Oh god. Prepare for terror. The history of Garfield's nightmare. Created by Kevin Perjurer. Oh god. Don't get scared, chat.
In the mid-19th century, in the northeastern region of the United States,
Are you gonna watch all of this?
That people could not get enough of.
No.
Picnics. While picnics have been a French
Hey!
pastime for over a century, Americans did not begin to indulge in the practice.
I take myself out on
1800s,
picnics.
And then it was almost exclusively for the upper class. By the mid-19th century, though, people of all means were packing a basket, finding a picturesque location, and sitting on a blanket to enjoy a meal. Maybe somebody would bring a guitar and play some tunes. Maybe some couples would sneak off for some alone time.
Whoa!
Maybe some giant boat would row by to watch.
Little
Everyone
showmance
loves a
happening
picnic.
in this
And
painting.
for those living near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of the most popular
Holy.
picnic locations was Kenny's Grove, a beautiful section of a farm owned by a man named Anthony Kenny. Located southeast of Pittsburgh in the Mifflin Township,
How does Garfield get
Kenny's Grove
involved
was a
here?
popular picnic location with a beautiful view of the Monongahela River Valley. The area would become so popular in the latter half of the 19th century that in 1898, the Monongahela Street Railways Company sought to create a picnic
Thanks for 200
park
bits,
at the end of
Nolan.
their
Hey,
Mifflin streetcar line.
founder
The company
here.
leased
Might
land
I
from the Kenny
request this
family and
video?
renamed the picnic
Thanks,
area
link.
to Kennywood Park. This type of trolley park was common throughout the United States, and they were typically created to increase railway profits, especially on the weekends. As
Money.
with many trolley parks, Kennywood Park would not remain a picnic park forever. In 1898,
Money.
just a year after leasing the land, Monongahela added a dance pavilion, the casino building restaurant, and Kennywood's first ride, a carousel. The following year, a bandstand was constructed, and the year after that, in 1901, Kennywood built another new ride.
Wait, is
named
Kennywood related
the
to
Old
Garfield?
Mill. The Old Mill was not a unique ride to Kennywood, but rather an entire category of amusement park ride. Old mills are slow-moving
I don't know
boat
my
rides
Garfield
with no
lore.
steep inclines or declines. The water in many of these rides are moved, as the name suggests, by a mill. Old mills were best known for their significant indoor stretches that were most often in pitch black
Because Garfield's
darkness.
not
This
real.
led many couples to take advantage of the dark portions for romance-related activity,
Whoa.
leading to the Old Mill getting its more recognizable name, the
Tunnel of
These seemed to
Love.
sprout up all over the place in the late 19th and early 20th century,
Holy.
in World's Fairs, state fairs, trolley parks, and amusement parks. And their reputation soon became a marketing ploy, with more and more old mills receiving branding of a romantic or sexual nature. The Old Mill of
What?
Kennywood was one of the first Old Mill rides. And
Take
although
off
it
your
was never
documentary
branded
voice for
specifically
saying
as a tunnel of
sexual
love,
nature. Come
local
on.
couples found that it worked just the same. Kennywood's Old Mill would receive several themes and overlays.
Wait, so
during its
how
first
long is the
season.
tunnel? It's like a minute to go through the tunnel and people are hooking up? What do you do with the remaining 50 seconds?
Of operation. It was first themed to the Fairyland floats, then to the canals of Venice, and later to the Panama Canal, which at the time was an extremely topical theme as the actual Panama Canal had just debuted. After the Panama Canal theme, the Old Mill became the Rapids Gorge and then the Fairyland floats again, before returning to its classic name, the Old Mill. In 1922, the ride underwent a refurbishment and received a new facade to appear more like a New England mill, and had its ride system overhauled and enlarged. Arguably the biggest change to the Old Mill in its early years would come after
This
the
looks
ride
fun.
caught on fire and burned to the ground.
Oh, never
being
mind.
rebuilt for the 1926 season.
Bro,
and
skip
receiving
to
new theming with
Garfield?
comic
Dude,
supplement
you guys are
characters,
Garfield crazy. You
including
need
Happy
to know the
Hooligan,
lore.
The Katzenjammer Kids,
Someone just said skip
and
to 10
Jigs and
minutes.
Maggie. In
Should I just skip to
1936,
Garfield?
The Old Mill was redecorated again with 8 new theatrically lit pictures. Another major refurbishment to the ride occurred in 1940. During this season, the Old Mill received a renovation with new animations. The refurbishment featured 7 well-known characters from comic strips and cartoons, including Blondie, Popeye, the Lone Ranger, the Little King, Tarzan, Gulliver, and Little Henry. In 1957, the Old Mill was themed to a trip around the world. The comic characters were replaced with scenes of Hawaii, a kangaroo in Australia, a tiger in Asia. an elephant in Africa,
This
and
looks
even
fucking
Santa
horrible.
Claus in the North
That looks
Pole.
so scary.
The loading area was also given an animatronic band of monkeys that would play music.
Show
for
us
guests in the
Garfield,
queue,
come
which was
on!
apparently auctioned off just 1 month before I started writing this video, although it sold for $2,300, which is more than I've ever spent on an animatronic monkey band. For the 1974 season, the Old Mill would receive its most significant thematic overhaul to date, becoming Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously humorous haunted hideaway. This retheme sent riders through an Old West ghost town, with comical and frightening scenes of skeletons placed throughout the ride. Some of these figures were animated, and sound effects were added to a few sections. This is the first version of the attraction that has been well documented, and it showcases the creative placement of the show scenes throughout the ride track. The Old Mill's middle section consists of 3 circles.
Hey,
In
is
the
it just
center of
me,
these,
or
outdoor
does this
show
look
scenes were
like,
constructed, with parts of the tunnel
Mickey
being
Mouse?
removed and replaced with fencing so guests could look outside. There are also 4 show buildings where dark ride scenes have been placed. Despite
No,
the
not
creative
Kaka,
theming of
guys.
Hard-Headed
No, not
Harold's
Kaka. I'm
horrendously
talking
humorous
Mickey
haunted
Mouse.
hideaway, the Old Mill continued to be known for one thing. Kennywood's director of community and government relations put it best, explaining, quote, "It didn't matter what the theme was. Anyone who rode that ride in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were not on that ride to look at the scenes."
It's a place for cuddling and to sort of make out canoodle. I'm a little bit nervous about getting on the Old Mill with the girl the first time because
Ew, dude!
you might end up getting slapped, but you also might end up getting, a
Ew!
In 1984, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did a feature on the ride's reputation of romance.
Ew,
When interviewed,
it's so
15-year-old Missy
creepy.
Stash said, quote, "Everyone goes
What
in there
the
and really goes at it.
fuck?
You should see. Some of the boats come out and there's
Ew.
nobody in them." 61-year-old Ellen Ammon,
No, I'm not
recalling
canoodling
her
with
Old
you
Mill trip
guys.
from the 1930s, remembered that the boys would bring string onto the ride.
The
In the dark
boys!
portions, they would brush the string along the necks of girls to convince them that there were spiders and water snakes in the tunnels, in an effort to hold them close through their terror. Another common occurrence was seeing couples buttoning up their shirts while exiting the attraction. An uptick in romantic activity in the Old Mill was met with an increase in supervision from the park. Kennywood employees would be stationed at various points throughout the ride, armed with a flashlight and a disapproving stare. They would rarely intervene if the activity was nothing more than a kiss, but for anything more than that, the young couples would be told to knock it off. At one point in the 1960s, Kennywood employees were given a plastic bat and were instructed that if they saw the naked buttocks of any rider, they were to smack them with the bat. This was very...
Dude, in 2022, that's like kinky. In 2022, that would be like, let's fucking get smacked, baby.
effective, and
Let's
almost always
fucking
prompted the
go.
embarrassed couples to quickly redress themselves for the remainder of the journey. This solution was actually quite popular in Old Mills, as this photo from a different tunnel of love proves. Kennywood would later install cameras and a PA system so that employees could tell riders to stop their behavior without having to assault them in the dark. Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously humorous haunted
2023. Happy New
hideaway
Year's, everybody. My
understandably
bad.
dropped the alliterative name in 1992, reverting back to the Old Mill but keeping the rest of the theming. As the Old Mill entered the 2000s, officially celebrating its 100th birthday, Kennywood was weighing the pros and cons of the ride. Due to its age and design, the
I'm gonna take
attraction
out the
required
bat.
a
How do
lot
you
of
guys like
maintenance
that?
and took up a
Seriously.
significant
Show me your
amount of
hands.
land at the park. Kennywood is well known for constantly building new attractions and creating new experiences to push locals to come back each season. So it was not out of the question to tear down the Old Mill and replace it with something more modern and thrilling. However, the management at Kennywood also cares deeply for
Can
the
I just
history
say,
of
this
the
is a
park,
great video.
and few, if any, wanted to see the park's oldest attraction torn down. So 100 years after its opening and 30 years after its last major refurbishment, a refresh of the Old Mill was on everyone's minds. Kennywood wanted to find a way to keep the historic ride in the park, but update it to appeal
No
to modern
fucking.
audiences. And
Guys,
the answer
no
to this
fuck-
would come in the form of a powerful cat named Garfield.
What the hell? He's smoking
It
marijuana.
was a comic strip written by cartoonist Jim Davis that debuted in
Rise.
1976. The eponymous orange tabby cat needs no introduction. The general public is well aware of his love of lasagna, hatred of Mondays, and his trademark laziness. Garfield, along with his dorky owner John, John's naive dog Odie, and a cast of other recurring characters, quickly found
Odie?
their ways into the comic sections of newspapers across the country. By 1982, the strip was appearing in over 1,000 newspapers. Over the next 2 decades, as the comic and character rose in popularity, Garfield would spawn an unprecedented amount of merchandise and media.
I hope he never
including
gets his
toys,
lasagna.
books,
Seriously.
video games, TV specials, and much more.
Seriously.
Despite Garfield being a household
I hope every
name
day's a
and
Monday
face
for
being on
Garfield.
everything from tea kettles to lava lamps, he was noticeably absent in amusement parks. It seemed that every major park chain had a classic cartoon character as a mascot. Disney had Mickey Mouse and Friends, Universal had Woody Woodpecker, Cedar Fair had the Peanuts Gang, and Six Flags had the Looney Tunes. Garfield's omission from the medium was not lost on his creator.
Dude, that is the worst outfit ever. What the fuck is this? This is Garfield from Costco. This is like the fucking worst Garfield outfit I've ever seen, man.
And that's the history of Garfield and theme
That
parks.
shit looks so bad.
Wait, 8 years later, he changed his mind. Wonder why. In 1996, plans were announced for a 535-acre theme park to be located in Davis's home state of Indiana, near Indianapolis in Hendricks County. The project was named the Heartland Festival Entertainment Complex, and at the heart of the park would be Garfield's universe, a land dedicated to the character. This would include a character carousel, Arbuckle's picnic coaster, a ride called Garfield's Extreme Adventure.
I've never heard of this
slide,
park.
Irma's Diner.
Should we go to Garfield's Park? You guys want to go?
Of course.
Should I take you guys?
Lasagna. The park was planned to open in 1997 and was a joint effort between a Michigan development company and Davis's company, Paws Inc. The cost of the project was estimated to be $120 million. By all accounts, Davis was significantly involved in the park's design, even going so far as to have a special Garfield theme park planning room and even conceptualizing the more mundane aspects of the project, such as the garbage cans and restrooms.
Dude, no. You piss in his mouth, man. Come on. Come on. You have to piss in Garfield's mouth, dude.
On top of the design contractors, Davis reached out to other amusement park operators to consult on the project during its early stages. This was when Davis first reached out to the Kennywood Entertainment Company, which owned 5 small parks in and around Pennsylvania, including Kennywood in West Mifflin. A year after the announcement, the opening date was pushed back to 1998. Despite significant utilities and groundwork being completed, the project struggled to find the remainder of its funding. The following year, the park rebranded to Garfield's Adventure America and scaled back on its plans, opting to construct and debut the Garfield area first, with the opening now planned for 1999. By this point, a significant number of Hendricks County residents opposed the project, even forming a group called Citizens Opposing Amusement Park, or COPE. The theme park was pushed back another year with a projected opening of 2000. In December of 1999, Kennywood officials attended the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions Convention and Trade Show. It is here that they learned that Garfield was available to license. It seemed that while Garfield's Adventure America was in a state of limbo,
he's horrible.
Davis was looking to integrate the character elsewhere.
Look at it, dude. He's high as hell, man. This is like after smoking for the first time when you look at yourself in the mirror. This is what stares back.
At least temporarily, and Kennywood Entertainment was reportedly one of his top choices, specifically the historic Kennywood Park as well as lake compounds in Connecticut. Kim Campbell, a spokesperson for Paws Inc., explained, quote, Jim liked the long histories of both parks, the family-friendly atmosphere, and the fact that they were picnic areas. Jim said the parks were a perfect fit for Garfield, who never met a picnic he didn't like. You didn't think that picnic stuff was gonna come back, did you?
I didn't.
An agreement was made between Kennywood and Paws Inc. for a 1-year licensing deal to have Garfield and Odie become the mascots of both Kennywood and Lake Compounds. This is despite the fact that Kennywood and Lake Compounds already had mascots. Kennywood had Kenny the Kangaroo, and Lake
fuck Kenny the
Compounds had Kyle the
Kangaroo,
Crocodile.
and fuck
Both
Kyle.
parks assured fans that Garfield and Odie would stand alongside the legacy characters and would not be replacing them.
Replace
this integration
them.
in the Northeastern Park seemed to conflict with the appeal of Garfield's Adventure America in Indiana. However, it was revealed that the developers of the Indiana park only had the exclusive rights to the character within a 150-mile radius, and that Jim Davis and Paws Inc. had never financially invested in the park.
Bro, if your name is
The developers
Kyle and
assured
you
the
spell
public
your
and
name
their
with a
investors
C,
that
not a K, fuck you.
Garfield's integration at Kennywood and Lake Compounds would not detract from the appeal of Garfield's Adventure America, but at this point, many were convinced that the park would never be built. Meanwhile, at the Kennywood parks, Garfield and Odie were fitting right in, taking photos with guests, selling merchandise, and appearing in advertisements. The integration
Job
was
Zane,
successful
thank you
enough
for
that
the
Kennywood
9
and
months.
Paws Inc.
Appreciate it. Hearts in the
extended their
chat.
agreement, further cementing Garfield's presence in the parks.
you.
Kennywood's Kittyland would receive more Garfield theming, and in 2002, the first Garfield ride opened at Kennywood, named Garfield's Pounce Bounce, a kitty bounce tower made to look like a block of cheese, covered in ice, and adorned with a Garfield
This looks
statue.
so fucking stupid.
As Garfield continued to increase his presence at
That
Kennywood,
looks
the
so
park in Indiana
stupid.
was
Dude, I thought that was gonna
finally
pan up to
canceled.
be this
The developer
tall
had been sued by one
structure,
of its
man.
contractors for lack of payment, and not long after this, it was revealed that the park owed $166,000 in back taxes. The park was soon foreclosed on, and the development company
It's a
filed
kids
for
ride?
bankruptcy.
Well, it's
By
fucking
2003,
stupid.
the project was dead, and the county was redistricting the land where the park would have sat. Despite the failure of the park, Davis was still passionate about Garfield's presence in theme parks. And since he and his company already had a successful relationship with Kennywood,
If you just
it
see
only
Garfield
made
in anything,
sense
do you
to go all
instantly
in
like
on the
it?
Pennsylvania
Is that what you're
park.
telling me?
It was time for Garfield to get his own dark ride.
A dark ride? Oh no.
It was at this point that the history of the old mill
Kissing
and the history of
Garfield
Garfield
ride?
collided.
Come
Davis and
on.
Paws Inc. wanted a Garfield dark
Come
ride,
on,
and
Jim,
Kennywood wanted to
come
retheme
on.
the old mill. The timing was perfect.
Come
And even better,
on.
Kennywood already had a designer in mind.
Come on.
Larry Kirshner, the owner of the haunted house design firm Halloween Productions, had recently installed an attraction at Kennywood, telling park management that if there ever came an
on.
opportunity to design a dark ride, Kirshner and Halloween Productions wanted in. Kirshner recalled wanting to design a dark ride so bad that he would almost
Guys,
do it
what
for
does a
free.
dark ride
When the
mean? What does that
Garfield
mean?
Old Mill retheme was discussed,
Does that mean scary?
Kennywood reached out to Kirshner, who happily accepted the job. Kirshner's plans for the attraction included
Like
animatronics
sexy?
and 3D effects. And his background in
a
haunted
ride
houses
in the
would lead him to
dark.
pitch a Garfield ride
Oh.
with horror and comedy aspects, not dissimilar to the Old Mill's hard-headed Harold theming. However, Kirshner's plans were too ambitious. He recalled, quote, "We wanted to make it look like a billboard.
No
smashed
lasagna,
open and there's a
bah!
Frankenstein food character, and then we squirt them all with water. I wanted to do other CGI effects so it wasn't so static and so the characters were interacting with them. Obviously, big effects like this were difficult to achieve in the retheme's limited budget, but the team ran into another issue entirely. Kennywood officials explained to Kirshner and Halloween Productions that, quote, "We can't make it too great because too many people would want to ride it. It has a pretty limited capacity since it's a boat ride." Pete McEnany, the general manager of Kennywood
God, people are
Entertainment,
so fucking
remembered,
dumb,
quote,
man.
"One of the things we had to do was not make it too spectacular because it doesn't have a high capacity. So with a small budget and an explicit directive to make the ride no better than good, the team marched forward." Kirshner imagined guests riding through the old mill as though they were riding through a Garfield book. The premise for the ride was that Garfield was having a nightmare, which would give the team an excuse to incorporate horror elements and retain some of the dark portions. One point of contention in the ride's history was the involvement of Jim Davis.
I want to
and
see what it
Paws
looks
Inc.
like.
While Davis certainly wanted the ride to be built and approved it, there was a dispute as to how involved he was in the creative process. McEnany recalled that Davis wrote the script for the ride and drew the concept art, but
A
Kirshner
script?
recalled, quote, "We did 20 or 30 drawings. He didn't do anything. I never talked to Jim Davis. The biggest thing was he or someone gave us some Garfield books, and then we had to figure out which story we wanted to tell." Despite the obstacles, Kirshner and Halloween Productions were able to pull off a substantial retheme to the old mill, resulting in the most elaborate overlay in the ride's 103-year-old history.
Jim Davis
How
is an
this version would be
anti-vaxxer?
received by the public, though, was still
Wait.
uncertain. On May 1st, 2004, Kennywood opened for the season with a brand new attraction, Garfield's Nightmare. The retheme to the old mill was dedicated with a small ceremony, at which Garfield and Odie took their first ride.
I'm
Kenny
not
the Kangaroo
excited,
was
I'm just
also in
checking.
attendance, although he could not fit
I'm
into
not
the boat with the other
anti-vax.
characters.
Ew, look at Kyle, this fucking disgusting creature. Ew. Ew, dude, look at it.
Guests entered the attraction under the large signage, twisting around an outdoor
That's Kenny
pool
the kangaroo?
with the familiar
I don't
old
know the
mill show
lore.
building
I'm
intact,
not familiar with
a
the
small
prequels.
adjustment. In the window of the mill house, a frightened Garfield could be seen inside as the shutters
Okay,
opened
incredible.
and closed. While
This is
waiting in line,
incredible.
riders viewed TV screens that explained the history of the ride and featured clips of Garfield. As guests entered the loading area, they were surprisingly handed 3D glasses to wear on the attraction.
Okay,
After
I'm
riders
in.
loaded into their boat, they would take a left turn, passing a guard station revealing that the ride was covered in cameras. Reportedly, this was intentionally put in plain sight as another deterrent for romantic activity. As guests climbed a short
No
lift hill,
kissing.
they heard a mysterious booming voice.
This is the most frightening adventure you will ever be on. Unless you have cheese. I like cheese. So give me some cheese and
It's a mouse.
After a right turn, guests went down a passageway covered in glowing advertisements for PepsiCo products, which was unsurprisingly Kennywood's food and drink vendor. This was also the first of many blacklight scenes, and the walls were splattered
Pepsi
with fluorescent
commercial?
material.
Dude, the fuck? This is so blatant. It doesn't fit the theme at all. What the
which was
fuck?
definitely added by
This is like how it is to watch Twitch.
Productions
Just
during
what
refurbishment
half of it
was
is
not
covered
the
by a
result of the
fucking
103
ad,
years
man.
of bad aim. This is also
What
where
the
the 3D
hell?
glasses came into play. Rather than being a stereoscopic
Fritos.
3D effect in which two images are made into one to simulate depth, Garfield's Nightmare used chroma depth, which diffracts colors through a holographic film. This results in certain colors popping into the foreground while others are pushed into the background. The warm colors, red, orange, and yellow, are the ones pulled forward, while blue, indigo, and violet are pushed back. This effect works best with bright primary and secondary colors, which inadvertently gave the ride
Fuck
a distinct
3D
color
glasses.
scheme. The chroma depth effect is commonly used in haunted houses.
Wake up, wake up, the
First
learning
are
portion is
industry
over.
leaders in the style. A benefit of the style
Don't
is that
accidentally learn.
unlike
Wake up, wake up.
stereoscopic 3D, riders could view the ride without glasses, and would not have the ghosting effect seen when watching a polarized or anaglyph 3D setup without glasses. A nice, possible coincidence was that Garfield was famously orange, so the character would always pop to the foreground, while the background and other characters in the ride would be painted with blue or green colors. If you'd like to try this out for yourself, you can find cheap chroma depth glasses online and watch a POV of the ride with the brightness turned all the way up. It's just like the real
POV?
thing. After the product placement tunnel, riders encounter their first Garfield strip, which depicts Garfield falling asleep after a big meal.
How the fuck does this look mid? There's literally Garfield saying, I guess a job well done is its own reward while he's sleeping. You're saying that's
the strips
mid?
appearing in the ride were previously released Garfield strips and not created specifically for the attraction. After this, guests enter the first scene, in which Garfield's messy house begins to come alive, with the door swinging open and shut. Garfield's voice plays overhead, repeating,
I never met an ice cream truck I didn't like.
Another strip depicted Garfield depressed that he couldn't catch the ice cream truck. In the next scene, the ice cream truck finally appears, but in a twist, the truck, driven by ice cream cones, is chasing after Garfield. Another strip depicted Garfield scaring the mailman, a running gag in the comics. The next scene shows the mailman smiling as an angry dog opens and closes its jaws. The next strip features another running gag from the comics, in which Garfield torments spiders. Predictably, the next scene is of a large spider tormenting Garfield. This pattern continues with another running gag, Garfield eating a fish in a fishbowl, followed by a scene of a fish eating Garfield. The most terrifying part of the ride this far
What the
is
fuck?
arguably
It's
this
that
chip
Marineland's revenge,
there.
dude. Don't you see it's all connected?
While not explicitly referenced in the ride, another running gag from the comic strip is Garfield using John's chair as a scratching post, and it appears that this chair, while not getting direct revenge on Garfield, is having a great time watching. The next scene shows Garfield's vet Liz holding a giant needle, with Garfield tied up by a rope.
Visor!
Held by an Igor-type character. The needle would blow a puff of air onto riders. Another strip depicts Garfield attacking the pizza delivery man, and the next scene shows the pizza
Squeex.
delivery man and
Happy
evil pizza
Fauci.
boxes
Hope
attacking
you had a happy holidays.
Thank you,
Excited
microwave.
to watch you
Garfield.
bake.
The next
Thank you
strip
for the
and scene
40
is a break
months.
from
Here, I
Fall.
made
The
you
strip
this.
depicts Garfield mentioning
Thank
that
you,
he's
Micro.
going to the
Appreciate it,
kitchen
man.
with a depressed-looking John saying nothing. The next scene is one of the most difficult to decipher. On the right side of the boat, the appliances in the kitchen have come to life in menacing fashion, while boxes of lasagna have formed a kick line on the table. On
This
the
is like, imagine like being super high and sitting
left
through
side
this.
of the boat, a
The
terrified
fuck
Garfield
is going
surrounded
on?
by an evil-looking John
I
and a
would
monster
not even be
Odin,
able to follow
who
this
appears to have
story.
torn off his long tongue and wrapped it around his body like a coat. There is also a zombie hot dog monster strapped to a table wearing sunglasses. The final strip and scene shows John asking Garfield to catch mice, which Garfield refuses to do. In the comic strip, Garfield will eat just about anything besides mice. Despite this, in Garfield's Nightmare, the mice still want revenge,
Rats?
cooking up a cat stew. As the ride nears its end, the characters that were tormenting Garfield moments ago are now lined up, smiling as the boat passes. Garfield's voice instructs guests that a photo op is coming up.
Oh yeah, got a photo opportunity coming up. Doesn't get any better than that.
The mouse from the
The
beginning of the ride
stupidest
instructs
ride.
guests to smile as a large camera is clearly placed
That
so
is
the
the
guests may pose for the
stupidest
picture.
ride.
As guests reach the end of the ride, a final strip appears on the wall. Garfield says, quote, "What a great ride. It was kind of scary, but it's over now."
Hey guys, Chris Pratt here, excited to be a voice for Garfield. Let me tell you, when I was a kid, there's nothing more than I loved than eating.
The creatures from the ride follow close behind.
Lasagna!
This appears to be the only Garfield strip created specifically for the attraction. Garfield's Nightmare was drastically different than the old mill Kennywood regulars were used to, and any significant change would have its detractors. However, Garfield's Nightmare almost immediately developed a cult nature among parkgoers.
What kind of fucking idiot? What an asshole to take this picture. This is the most fucking Yelp reviewer picture. What a fucking dweeb.
With many
What a
citing its
jerk.
cheap effects,
Why would you
product
take that?
placement, and overall bizarre nature. It was too scary for many children and too Garfield for many adults. For longtime Kennywood fans, it felt like a betrayal of the historic old mill. But in all fairness, they probably just weren't around for the 1920s version that featured Jiggs and Maggie, the Garfield and Odie of the 20s. As far as a Garfield ride goes, it successfully featured many classic characters and famous scenarios from the comics. And the original art that Kirshner and his team created for the ride looked like it was pulled straight out of a Garfield strip. Despite the low budget, the
looks
attraction
like
featured
the person
solid
was
gags
tripping
and
on
some
acid.
terrifying imagery.
What the fuck is this,
Kennywood
man?
regulars,
Looks
Garfield
insane.
fans, or even children think. The real demographic that matters is the one that gave the old mill its century-long reputation. Young couples. In a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette report before the ride's opening, Kennywood officials assured fans that, quote, "We haven't messed with what made the old mill," which the Gazette took to mean that, quote, "couples will still be able to find
They're gonna
a suitable spot
canoodle,
along the
dude.
way to, exchange pleasantries."
They're gonna
This persistent
canoodle.
mention in official media
Next to Garfield, like, let me tell you,
of the
Garfield will
ride's
really set the
reputation as
mood,
a
I
love
think.
tunnel sent me down a rabbit hole that I could not have anticipated. Full disclosure for anyone that is not aware, every amusement park ride you have ever been on or will ever go on has been the setting for some funny business.
Fuck you, man! Every seat in Disneyland's a cum seat, dude.
Whether it's at your local amusement park or at Walt Disney World, if you can be
What?
seated within arm's reach of another person, someone has found a way to do something on that ride.
What?
Talk about amusement park rides all the time, and I never mention this because it's never notable. It's just a given. However, in all of my research, I have never come across a ride in which major publications, journalists, have reported consistently, constantly on a ride's reputation like the old mill at Kennywood.
Wait, we all do like canoodling on these rides, right, guys? Right? Because it's super common, so surely we all are. Everyone has canoodled on these rides, right? We're not riding the rides alone, like a bunch of fucking losers, right?
Found a newspaper article from 1934 talking about how the ride is a great spot for couples. And the 1984 article in which couples were interviewed about their romantic activity pushed me over the edge. Not what I meant. After hearing mention that sometimes boats would pull into the station with no one inside, I knew that I had to go deeper. Dang it. Look, if you're just interested in the physical history of amusement park rides and you don't care about the culture attached to the old mill, I'd recommend skipping to this time code. For those remaining, there was a significant amount of documentation as to how Kennywood attempted to police young lovers on the ride, but little was known on how these riders were able to accomplish some of the feats that they were boasting about. Were these legends true, or were they fiction? In the name of research, I tweeted the following. Have you or someone you know ever made out or made love in
One in chat if... Actually, I
Old Mill
don't
Dark Ride at
actually, I
Kennywood
don't answer
Amusement
that.
Park?
I
If
didn't think it
please
was gonna
email
go
your
that
story
far.
to I made love in the old mill at Defunctland.
I'm not looking.
I followed up this tweet clarifying that I didn't want details of the activity. I wanted to know where in the ride people jumped out. And either no one saw this reply or they didn't care, because I did receive many emails, and most of them contained graphic details.
All of them are lying. These are all horny guys typing their fucking fantasy. What are you talking about?
Of activities
They're
that took
all
place in the
fucking
old mill.
lying.
To borrow a bit of Pittsburghese, yins are nasty.
What are you
Of the
talking
56
about?
messages I received,
Garfield's lasagna love evening with me and my hot babe.
only
Like,
3 were
yeah,
obviously
right.
fake, and the vast majority contain details far too specific
Yeah,
to be
fucking
made up,
right, dude.
mentioning school trips or special events that I verified were accurate. I'm not going to share any of these and assert that they are 100%
These are just fan
true,
fiction.
But here are a few of the more interesting submissions with redacted bits for anonymity and
As a man from Pittsburgh, this is not a lie? Wait,
inappropriateness.
people are
Feel free
making
to
out on
pause
these
and read
rides.
at your own pace.
saw you were looking for stories. But while we didn't fuck, me and my partner made sweet, passionate gay kisses on the old mill because it was dark and skeletons were kind of cute. This isn't even... This is just my chat messages today, man. Hello, Mr. Defunct. My name is Carl. I am 48 years old. I don't normally share things like this, but I like your vids, and your recent tweet was surprisingly relevant to me. LOL. My lover, ex-husband, don't marry your manager assistant, or your first summer job. LOL. And I went through the line normally, but as more and more people began to get packed in the line, my downstairs got as slippery as a log jammer. We were subtle grinding in the line. It was shaded by this point, so we weren't in the spotlight, so to speak. We played handsy, hotsy, totsy on the actual ride. And let me tell you that even though my ex-husband was a general disappointment in life, Garfield and I were both screaming at the end of the ride. What the fuck? This was back when it was Garfield theme. Hope that's what you wanted. I was maybe 14 years old on the ride with my dad visiting the park to celebrate recovery from recent surgery. The two older teens in the boat in front of us were making out passionately. Yes, on the Garfield ride. I never witnessed such graphic kissing despite seeing their silhouettes. There were noises, but I couldn't sure whether it was them or the ride because wet slapping could have been them or the nasty boat water. My dad grumbled the whole time but didn't say anything of it. It was so painfully awkward. Wait, what the fuck? Wait a second.
Your own pace.
Anyway, the last vacation I went on my dad before he died, so I hope they enjoyed themselves. Hi, this is in no way related to lovemaking, but although I guess some people are into it, when I was about 10 or so on Kennywood Day, my friend was in the boat in front of us, and at the time we were big into aerial dumps, which is exactly what it sounds like. Shitting from the highest area you possibly could. Trees were commonly used as standing at You know what? I'm on team climate change. Things I've done on a Garfield's Nightmare, made out with two different people, was fucked and felt cock? Hi there.
In the end, the email submissions did provide a few interesting insights. First, smart couples would come in packs, try to space out their boat departures as best they could from other riders, and then run their hands on either side of the boat to slow their motion, thus extending the ride and their time in the dark. Second, there are at least two people who claim to know someone that was conceived on this ride.
I think this would ruin me. If I found out I was conceived on a Garfield ride, I think it would ruin me. I don't think I could, I think that would actually be so sad.
Maybe it's you. Third, most surprising,
why would they include that, man?
the Garfield
Ben,
overlay did
thank
not
you for the
deter many
raid, man. I
people
hope
from
your
treating
stream
the
was
old mill as the
pog.
same tunnel of love previous generations had enjoyed. In fact, the majority of my emails were about acts of passion that took place in the neon-lit tunnels of Garfield's Nightmare. Some people noted that the Garfield theming diminished
Like, how are you supposed to look at this and not be horny as fuck? Do you know what I mean?
the aura of romance, while others admitted that they believe it added to it. Some even purposefully sought it out. Maybe ironically, maybe not. As one emailer so eloquently put it, quote, Garfield knows all of our sins. Perhaps the greatest sin, though, was the lack of upkeep and proper maintenance that Garfield's Nightmare experienced. Within just a few years, the screens in the queue were removed, and many of the effects in the ride stopped working. The audio cues were off or missing, and the video of the mouse at the beginning sometimes wouldn't play. The neon paint started to fade, diminishing any effect the 3D glasses
Poor
had.
Garfield.
The 3D glasses themselves would often not be handed to guests, and it seemed they were eventually phased out altogether, although they would reappear infrequently. When guests were given 3D glasses, the often rambunctious riders would make a game out of throwing them onto the ride, trying to land them in the mouth of the dog or hit certain objects. Oddly,
fuck
the upkeep of the
human beings.
ride was so poor that the whites of the eyes of the characters in the blown-up comic strips were either faded
This is horrifying.
or removed, resulting in them appearing permanently blackened.
This is
All of this
scary.
somewhat added to the uneasy nature of the ride, but it really just showed the attraction's lack of upkeep. Other than this, the ride lived a quaint, quiet existence, with no major changes or updates. Year after year, Kennywood would open for the season, and Garfield's Nightmare would open with it. In 2007, a Nintendo DS platform named Garfield's Nightmare was released. But besides the title,
Can we
the
play
game
this?
is in no way connected to the ride. In 2011, the Garfield comic strip featured Garfield, Odie, and John
I
going to an
don't
amusement park
normally
named
share things like this, but I like your vids. My lover ex-husband done marry your assistant manager from your first summer job. Ella.
Kennywood, which
Sorry,
appeared
no,
to be
it's
a
a
parody of
20-second.
Kennywood. After 2008, Garfield and Odie were phased out
Thank
as
you.
Kennywood mascots and stopped
For the 200
appearing in
bits.
advertisements. Kenny the Kangaroo reclaimed his throne in West Mifflin and
Lol.
even got a sidekick. Does he look familiar? No, it's the sign. It's the Kennywood sign. You can meet the sign.
He looks like,
Kennywood would eventually integrate Thomas the Tank Engine and the Pittsburgh Steelers into attractions at the park, and the new properties fit into Kennywood much more effortlessly than Garfield ever did. Despite Garfield and Odie no longer appearing in the park, Garfield's
Thomas?
Nightmare continued to operate, year after year, with no end in sight. This was until 2019, when news broke that Paws Inc. was being acquired by Viacom, and the rights to Garfield would be utilized by Viacom subsidiary Nickelodeon. This also put Viacom in charge of the
oh, that's why he's in multiverses.
licensing. Viacom immediately began tightening the brand's image, and the company told Kennywood that if they wished to continue to operate Garfield's Nightmare, the licensing fee would be increased significantly. This pressured Kennywood
He's not,
into
I know.
removing the Garfield's Nightmare theming from the old
Nickelodeon
Mill,
All-Star
and nowhere
Brawl,
at the
I
park
meant.
put up
It's
much
all
of
the
a
same
fight to
shit.
save
It's
the
not
ride.
Smash.
Garfield's Nightmare had operated for 16 seasons, and for many, that was 16 too many. This is not to say that the attraction had no fans, as in those 16 years of operation,
This ride
the
looks
entire
bad.
generation of Kennywood visitors had experienced the ride as their one and only version of the Old Mill. In March of 2020, Kennywood's YouTube account posted a video titled "The History of the Old Mill at Kennywood." The video started as a Ken Burns-style theme park documentary in a
What?
similar vein to other YouTube channels that I'm completely blanking on. However, halfway through the video, it was revealed that this was not just a retrospective of the Old Mill, but it was also an announcement.
We're going to be bringing back the Old Mill as so many of you
Wait,
have
Garfield's
requested,
dead.
and restoring the ride to the retro Western theme.
Garfield's
The news
dead.
was celebrated by fans who cheered, "The nightmare is over." And the Pittsburgh City Paper's headline read, "I hope they serve lasagna in heaven." During the off-season, the ride was gutted and completely rethemed. Unfortunately, all of the props from Garfield's Nightmare with a direct tie to the Garfield brand were destroyed at the demand of Viacom, in order to prevent them from being sold or ending up on the black market. To ensure compliance, Kennywood had to film employees completely destroying the Garfield props. The opening of the ride would be delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but when
Sean
debuted
Roan, thank you
guests
for the
in
8
July of
months.
2020, when Kennywood opened for a
Hey,
shortened summer
Squeener.
season, it was met with positive reviews. The familiar Old West Ghost
Thank
Town
you.
theme was welcomed back into the historic ride. Despite the massive overhaul, the new theming utilized multiple props and effects from
Guys, one in
Garfield's
chat if you'd
Nightmare.
buy Garfield
The new
as a
Old Mill
neon,
also had
like,
multiple
sign.
tributes to Kennywood history, including references to previous Old
I
Mill
100% would.
iterations. For instance, the appearance of a character named Harold, referencing hard
This is the dead ass emote. Holy shit, it's dead
Harold's
ass.
horrendously humorous haunted hideaway. The scenes also featured multiple orange tabby cats throughout the ride, and a tombstone. in
This
a
ride looks
graveyard
like
read, "G Nightmare.
even...
I hope there is lasagna."
That's like spitting on a grave. Fuck you.
The Old Mill at Kennywood is the world's oldest operating Old Mill attraction, and this is not by coincidence. Kennywood is a historic park whose employees and visitors care deeply for its history. While Garfield's Nightmare was not necessarily a beloved attraction, the retheme played an important part in extending the life of this historic ride. While some might remember Garfield's Nightmare for its neon paint and surreal visuals, like any Old Mill retheme, most Kennywood guests will remember the attraction for something else. While most of the
Kissing!
emails I received detailed explicit
Hey, while it was Garfield theme, I gave incredible head to a guy on the ride. After the first bend, once you're properly in the tunnel with the Garfield panels and the Pepsi ads, I... something on him. I don't even know why I'm telling you this.
and often disgusting acts of passion that took
Went down
place
on
the
him.
Old Mill. My takeaway was not that the ride should be burned to the ground for the good of the general public. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The romantic activities that happened within the walls of the Old Mill, as humorous
Let me
and
tell you, there's nothing romantic about that.
as they could be, reminded me
Let
of
me tell you, those are sins.
something that I've always believed.
In front of
These amusement parks
Garfield?
are special environments where some of our strongest memories are formed, whether that's thrill, imagination, or even love. Hearing people
Aw.
of many different generations share how this one ride impacted them was
Love.
surprisingly moving. To hear stories of young angst, the nerves of going on the ride with someone you had a crush on, the scariness of having your first kiss, and even missed opportunities, lost loves. For one rider who
Don't
grew up in
cry.
a small town, the dark tunnels of the attraction were the first place he felt safe kissing his boyfriend. For a married couple, a trip on the Old Mill
God.
made them laugh and feel like they were in high school again. When the messages weren't overtly erotic, they were actually beautiful, and a good reminder of why I love talking about these parks. They are memorable and exciting places where it's as much about riding the attractions as it is who you are riding with. And sometimes the most memorable experience one can have is getting a kiss while riding a boat through a dark tunnel. And sometimes it's getting a kiss while riding a boat in front of a neon Garfield.
Can I like wank my shit on the ride or whatever, or would that ruin the vibe?